So let's jump right in. My name is Zahir Ringgold Cortez, and I work at IFAS Extension here in Sarasota County on the Ecology and Natural Resources team as the Environmental Education and Outreach Program Assistant. So mostly what I do is provide wildlife and ecology education for youth and adults. So that can mean a lot of different things, whether it's about our native wildlife species here, how to conserve wildlife, and how we can better coexist and live alongside the wildlife that share this community with us. I have a special interest in focusing on herpetology education, so teaching about reptiles and amphibians. And then we lead field trips for Sarasota County students to visit some of our local county and state parks throughout the school year. And then in relation to our health benefits of nature, we also share this education widely with the community, and we lead meditation walks in some of our county parks and preserves as well. A little bit more about me. I have a bachelor's degree in education with coursework focusing on childhood development. And then I also have a minor in sustainability. And I'm certified as a Florida Master Naturalist, a Southeastern Master Herpetologist, and a yoga instructor. So teaching about the environment and also our health and how we can support youth is something that I'm really passionate about. And I know Dr. Clements is really passionate about as well. A little bit more about UF-IFAS Extension. We are a partnership between Sarasota County government, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and the University of Florida. And really, our core purpose is to share out the research and the resources from the University of Florida with our community in ways that are relevant here in Sarasota. So we have 6 core areas, and they are agriculture, community development, gardening, and landscaping. And underneath of that, we have our residential horticulture program, as well as supporting commercial horticulture and some of our school gardens and community gardens. We also have a robust natural resources team, educating about our water resources, our marine resources, our ecology and natural resources team, which is Dr. Catherine and myself, and chemicals in the environment as well. And then, of course, our nutrition and healthy living and our 4-H youth development program as well. There's an extension office in every county in Florida, and you can always visit us Monday through Friday from 8 to 5 here at our Twin Lakes Park location, right off of Clark Road. So before we jump into the information, I wanted to start out by asking you all to think about what was your childhood relationship to nature like? What did you do outdoors? Did you like being outside? Did you go outside often? Did you spend time with other friends, other kids in your neighborhood? What was your relationship like? And you can think also, kind of compare that to the relationship to nature that you see in the children in your life, whether that's the children that you teach, or your own children, or other children in your family or in your community. What do you notice that's similar or different to your own relationship to nature as a child? So I wanted to have everyone think about that a little bit because this quote really speaks to a lot of what we're going to get into today. And it's that humans have spent 99.9% of our history living in nature, yet in our modern life, we've become indoor people. So this really exemplifies how even just a couple years ago, adults who have grown up now, they were spending a lot more time in nature as children than the kids do today. So there's some more research coming out to really identify this problem. So we're going to get into what is the problem, and bear with me because it can be a little bit sad to go through these things. I promise it's going to turn up towards the end. We're going to explore how nature can help with these issues and all of the amazing resources and opportunities that are present to kind of help combat some of the things that we're talking about today. So adult Americans are spending around 7% of their time outdoors. So 87% of time indoors. And then, of course, a lot of time in our cars when we're commuting and things like that. And the reason why I wanted to talk a little bit about that when we're here discussing youth is because kids often mimic or copy what adults do. So if us as adults, we're kind of spending less and less time outside, it's reasonable to think that kids might be spending less time outside too. And all of the kids in the United States are not spending the same amount of time outside. So we'll look at a lot of different studies, but The amount of time that kids spend outdoors kind of varies across different communities and for different reasons. But some studies are showing that kids are spending as little as 30 minutes outside, even 4 to 7 minutes. But then other studies show a little bit more of a positive outlook, a little bit more time spent outdoors. So the US Forest Service has done a study to show that actually 62.5% of American youth are spending at least 2 hours outside per day. And then in the United Kingdom, they've actually done some studies to show that kids are spending 50% less time than their parents did as children outdoors. So, thinking again back to your own childhood relationship with nature, you hear all these stories of people saying, "Oh, when I was a child, we just went outside. We didn't come back home until the sun came down. We played outside a lot." And then if you look at kids today, that can be a little bit less common. So here in Florida, kids are required to have 100 hours a week of recess or free play time if they're in K through fifth grade. So if a child potentially isn't getting any other outdoor time in other areas of their life, they might potentially be getting that 20 minutes roughly a day during school hours. And this kind of relates to the amount of physical activity that kids are getting today, because when kids are outside, they're engaging in a lot more health promoting physical activity. So, around 28% of our youth are meeting the recommended 60 minutes of physical activity each day. And that physical activity is really critical for overall health, for mental health as well. So, we really want to make sure that we're supporting youth as much as possible to get outside, to engage in that healthy physical activity. So back to this quote, if you really think about the vast expanse of human history, evolution takes a long time. So we've kind of quickly changed our lifestyle in just a short amount of time. It takes a long time for our bodies to really catch up to those changes. So we've changed how we live, but our bodies aren't necessarily there yet. They still need a little bit more of that outdoor time um, that we are accustomed to in our history. So getting into screen time a little bit more. A lot of kids love screen time, and that does show in the research. Children excluding schoolwork, around 65.7% of boys and 64.6% of girls are spending 2 hours or more per weekday in front of screens. So this percentage goes up as kids get older. So at the older range of that 2 to 17 years old, some kids are spending around 80% of those kids more than 2 hours per day on school or on screens, excluding their schoolwork. And then overall, if we look at kids who are between the years of 8 to 18, they're actually averaging around 7.5 hours of screen time per day. And then for teens, as I mentioned before, those numbers go up. So up to 9 hours, excluding homework time. So screening time limits don't have enough research for me to say confidently to you all, this is how much time a child should spend on screens for their health. But there are some studies and some research to show what is healthier for younger kids and what some of the impacts of spending excessive amounts of screen time are for those younger kids. So, for some of those, the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychology would recommend around 1 hour a weekday for youth between the ages of 2 through 5, if that's non educational. But if you kind of look at what is actually happening, around 47.5% of our youth between those same ages are spending over 2 hours per weekday in front of screens. And the reason why this matters is because excessive screen time can have impacts on kids' mental and physical health as well. So, of course, when you're sitting at the screen, you are engaging in less health promoting physical activity. Those screens can also disrupt sleep, reduce academic performance. They can result in mood issues in some children. And then, of course, the content matters as well. So, kids being exposed to media content that may negatively impact their mental or emotional well being. And then for babies and youth up to 3 years, increased screen time has actually been linked to reduced performance on behavioral, cognitive, and social development screening tests. But as I said before, not all screen time is equal. So the content that kids are looking at matters a lot. And for some older kids, they actually report finding community and social connection online. And then, of course, if you've been around children, you hear them spitting out all of these really interesting facts. So they can learn and engage in positive content on screens and online as well. So when we talk a little bit more about youth mental health, we said those screens can impact youth mental health in some ways, but also reduce physical activity can reduce mental health. So for youth today, there are some common struggles that you see in the research. Around 1 in 7 youth ages 3 through 17 are reported to have some kind of mental, emotional, developmental, or behavioral condition. Most commonly, those are anxiety, behavioral concerns, and depression. Around 40% of high school students surveyed have said that they experience persistent feelings of sadness and hopelessness. And that's really hard to hear that such a high amount of youth are struggling consistently. And then, kind of to add a new layer of mental health struggles, anxiety around environmental crises is impacting more and more youth as well. So, young people around the world, there was a study conducted that studied kids all over the globe. And they were really reporting that feeling anxious about environmental degradation and these environmental crises impacts their mental health regularly as well. So we really want to think about how can we support youth? How can we give them the tools that they need to combat some of the things that may be going on in their lives or in the world on a global scale too? So, spending time in nature and connecting with nature in the ways that we'll discuss are not replacements for treatment and for access to social and mental health services, but what they can do is act as a protective factor for youth and their mental and physical health. So, a protective factor really helps an individual to cope with other stresses that could result in negative outcomes, but those protective factors sort of come in and give them the support and the tools that they need to overcome other challenges. Spending time in nature and engaging and connecting with nature can also act as a positive coping mechanism. So, something that youth can turn to when they are feeling stressed and they're struggling, can provide mental restoration. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that means shortly. And then, of course, also providing opportunities for positive growth and development and encouraging social connection with peers, which is important for us and for youth as well. So, as I mentioned, there's good news. It's not all bad. Nature can help with a lot of these things that we've just mentioned. Before we get into some of the ways that nature benefits youth's mental and physical health, I want to ask you all again, how do you define nature? So, what would be your definition of nature when you think about that word? It can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So, when we say spend time in nature, what do you think of? So I'll share here a kind of dictionary definition of nature to start out from the Cambridge Dictionary, and that is nature is all of the animals, plants, rocks, etc. in the world, and all the features, forces, and processes that happen or exist independently of people. And I want to highlight that because a lot of the definitions of nature that we are commonly engaging with, that we commonly see, exclude humans. And that really contributes to a disconnection from nature and this idea that we're not a part of our natural environment, which is going to influence how we behave and how we view the natural world. So, the more that we can understand how we're connected and how we are part of the natural environment around us, how our bodies are interacting with that natural environment, the more we can kind of see nature as something that is vital to our well being and something important in our lives. So here's a couple of cool ways that we are connected with nature without even trying. So one of those ways is through breathing in things called phytoncides. Those are airborne chemicals that are produced by some species of trees, and they're chemicals that protect those trees from insects and fungal infections. But when they're released out into the air and we breathe them in, they've actually been shown to boost our natural killer cell activity and quantity. And those natural killer cells help our body to fight off cells that may be infected or sick or unwell. So they boost our immune system. Another thing is fractals. Fractals are repeating shapes and patterns of different sizes and scales, and they're found in nature. And I'll show a couple examples of what those look like in the next slide. But there are things like that really interesting broccoli that has all of those spiral shapes, or the spiral shape inside of a seashell. And they actually are recognized by the human brain in 50 milliseconds. So without you even thinking about it, when you go out in nature and you see those unique patterns and shapes that repeat at different scales, your brain recognizes that. And actually, it's been shown that those fractals can reduce stress and mental fatigue in us. And then, of course, we also need nature for a lot of the things that are important for us in our daily lives that we don't even think about. Like the crops that we depend on for food, around 35% of our food crops are pollinated by insects that need healthy environments to survive. We also benefit from trees and the canopy cover that they provide that keep us cool when we have increasingly hot temperatures. They've done studies to map out how much cooler, several degrees cooler, different areas are just based on the amount of tree canopy and coverage that they have there. So here's a couple images of those different fractals. So a little bit more about what nature is and where you can find it. I like to say that nature is everywhere, and it's important to recognize that even in the city. In the picture in the top right, you can see someone walking up the stairs in a city environment, those trees that we have in the streets and sidewalks, the plants that are there. You can see birds utilizing those plants and trees too. In the bottom right, that is a baby bird nest that was found in a tree right in our parking lot here. So all around us, even in places that we don't immediately see as nature, nature is everywhere. So when you're spending time in nature, you can go into your backyard. If you have one, you can go to your doorstep, to your lanai or balcony. You can look at plants on the sidewalk, your neighborhood parks, forests, more traditionally thought of as wilderness spaces that are big open areas, state parks, national parks. You can go to our beaches, our seeing street trees, gardens, all of these different ways of engaging with nature all matter. And then more specifically, it's actually been broken down into green spaces and blue spaces. So studies have been conducted on both green spaces, which are areas that are tree covered, that are green. There's forests there, parks are natural areas that have plant life, fields. Those places have benefits for our mental and physical health. And they've actually shown that increased biodiversity, so a greater amount of different plants and trees and different animals, has been shown to give us even more psychological health benefits. And then for blue spaces, those bodies of water, we live just near the Gulf here. Lakes, rivers, waterfalls, bays, other coastlines, even city fountains have been shown to have some impacts on people. But researchers have actually found a link between better mental health and living near coasts and bodies of water. So both blue spaces and green spaces, and we're really lucky here in Sarasota County to have both around us. Both of those are important and can offer benefits to our mental and physical health. And I want to say that both those sort of local nature opportunities, your backyard, your neighborhood parks, and what I like to call big nature, so the big state parks and county parks and preserves and national parks, places that really inspire that sense of awe in you when you go there and you're just looking at these natural environments, these landscapes, and you're inspired. Those are important too. So how do we engage youth with nature to bring about some of those benefits? And what are those benefits that those youth will experience from being outdoors? Of course, increased physical activity. We spoke about this briefly already, but youth who spend more time outdoors have actually been shown to report higher levels of physical activity. So spending more time outside naturally is going to promote more exercise. And that physical activity is important because it's linked to a lot of different health outcomes. So improved cognitive function, better cardiovascular and bone health, healthy weight, reduced risk for depression, obesity, type 2 diabetes, and high blood pressure. So getting youth engaged in physical activity kind of sets them up to have a good foundation for their adult life as well. And then healthy development. For youth who are young, they're still developing their fine and their gross motor skills. So, the ability to build and make things, to grab on, to hold on, to climb on a tree, for example, is an example of a gross motor skill. Spending time outdoors provides all kinds of opportunities, these optimal conditions for youth to engage in physical challenges that are healthy and support their positive growth and development. And interestingly enough, studies have actually linked spending more time outdoors to a lower risk of developing myopia or nearsightedness later in life. So I'm nearsighted. I use glasses to see things that are far away. And kids who spend more time outdoors, because you're really exercising those muscles in your eyes, you're looking at things that are far away as opposed to screens that are close to you, your eyes are healthier. So moving a little bit away from the physical side of things, thinking about our mental and cognitive well-being, connecting with nature can actually support attention restoration. So if you have ever been really stressed, you're working on a project, you're really focused and engaged in what you're doing, you're feeling fatigued and like you just can't focus on this anymore, that is kind of like a mental attention fatigue that you experience. Kids can get that too. But being in nature offers exposure to restorative stimuli. So the sound of birds or water, the sight of green, the color green of trees and plants, that is stimuli that naturally catches our attention without stressing us out and sort of depleting our attention or focus battery. So children with ADHD have actually been shown to have improved concentration after just a 20-minute walk in a city park. So being outdoors really helps kids to kind of come back to center, calm down, and to expose them to stimuli that's going to restore their mental health. Stress reduction. So, of course, being out in nature helps us reduce stress. And spending just 20 to 30 minutes outside has actually been shown to reduce the amount of stress hormone cortisol in our salivary levels. So, spending time outdoors for 20 to 30 minutes, maybe once a day or each week or multiple times a week, that's kind of like a quick way to experience those immediate benefits of stress reduction. And that really supports youth in coping with stress in their lives generally and helping to regulate their emotions. So, if a child is having a really hard day, they're struggling, spending that time outside in nature with them could help give them a little bit more of an immediate reduction in that stress that they're experiencing. So, in some youth, and actually a little bit over half of the youth surveyed between the ages of 14 to 24, they report feeling calmer after spending time in nature, and around 22% report stress and anxiety relief as well. So, interestingly, kids want this too. They feel those benefits, and around 88% of some youth have been surveyed and show that they actually want to spend more time in nature. They recognize that they're receiving these benefits and it feels good for them. So how much time do you need to spend in nature to get those benefits? Referring back to that stress reduction in around 20 to 30 minutes, or those children with ADHD who experienced the benefits of spending 20 minutes outside during a walk in a park. 20 to 30 minutes is enough to get you some of those more immediate benefits. When we're talking about long-term well-being, aiming for around 2 hours per week has been shown to have benefit, and then really any amount of time you can spend in nature is good. So if you don't have 2 hours a week to add to your schedule to do something different, that's okay. Any amount of time that you can spend out in nature is going to bring benefit to your life and your family, your children's life, and the lives of children that you work with. So what do you do with kids when you're outdoors? There's a lot of different ways to engage with the natural world. And I will say that there's different benefits that are received from doing different activities. So when you go outside and you're going for a run, for example, or you're playing sports, you're going to get the benefit of that physical activity. But What we also really want to incorporate are experiences in nature that really allow us to slow down, to be intentional and connected with nature. So for kids, that can look like practicing art outdoors, doing something called a sit spot, which is where you find a place to sit down and you engage with all of your senses and explore the world in that way. So doing things with kids that both engage them in some of those fun, um, big kind of activities, playing sports, going for a hike, swimming, things like that, and also engaging them in those slowed down, more mindful activities as well. So backyard birding, listening to bird sound has been shown to have benefits for our mental well-being. Gardening, going and for a walk together, spending time together as a family with people that are important to the kids, people that they love. Going for a walk together is a great thing to incorporate into your weekly routine. Or when it comes to screen time, swapping screen time that's focused on something else for nature-focused screen time can help as well. And we'll get into that a little bit more too. And then briefly before I switch to the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about free play because free play is really, really important, especially for younger children. Free play is an opportunity to play without set constructs or rules for what that child has to be doing outdoors. So, of course, rules to keep them safe and everything are important, but free play means that that child gets to use their imagination. They get to be creative, to problem solve, to come up with games and ideas and ways to connect with other children that they might be playing outdoors with. That is really, really good for their development. So when you're getting outside, it's really important to feel safe and comfortable. So if you're trying to incorporate spending more time in nature into your routine and you feel uncomfortable, you don't really feel safe where you are, maybe it's really rainy and you don't have a rain jacket or an umbrella, things like that, all of that's going to impact how you feel when you're outdoors. So we want to think about how we can be as safe and as comfortable as possible when we go out for these experiences. So being prepared for kids, a lot of times that's bringing snacks along, bringing ample water, especially when we have the kind of heat that we have here in Florida. Making sure that they're not cold when we're outdoors once we get into a little bit more of the winter time. And then bringing your kids to trusted organizations that offer these programs for youth and families is a really great way to start incorporating spending time in nature into your family's lives without having to go on your own if you feel a little bit uncomfortable or unsure or as though you don't really know where you want to go or what to do. Places like Extension here, we offer programs for families to spend time in nature together, and we'll talk a little bit about some more of those opportunities towards the end of this presentation. And then learning more about the natural world impacts that sense of confidence and safety too. So when you know what kinds of plants and animals to expect when you go outside, that really helps you to feel a lot more comfortable when you're there and to know what to expect. So if going outdoors isn't accessible to you for any reason, you can still benefit from connecting with nature indoors. So there have been a variety of studies to show how having things like houseplants, gardens in your windowsill or balcony, views of trees and greenery from windows, visualizing nature or doing meditation practices that incorporate nature visualization, incorporating landscapes into your house. So pictures of nature that are beautiful and that inspire you, that your children are really interested in. Listening to nature soundtracks, all of those things can have positive impacts as well. So even if you can't go outside, there are different things that you can do from within the home. And for kids as well, bringing nature indoors, so doing art projects with things like sticks and different kinds of seeds and seashells are just ways to get kids engaging with nature without having to bring them outside as well. And then again, choosing nature for screen time, watching nature documentaries or fun shows that educate about nature and that show those beautiful images and those sounds are going to positively impact youth as well. So a couple of those ways before we get into questions that you can connect with us and have these opportunities to spend time outdoors in nature as a family. We have a youth and family webpage that outlines all of our youth and family opportunities. And we've got the QR code here as well as the link to the website. And Dr. Clement is going to be sharing a couple different links in the chat as well so that you can visit some of these pages. We have just launched a new program called Agents of Discovery, and that is a mobile learning opportunity where kids can utilize a smartphone to explore our parks. So they play these park-specific games through the Agents of Discovery app, and they can learn about our environment. So if you have a need for an activity that the family can participate in, and you want to have a little bit of that positive screen time, this is a really great way to engage with the natural world and to encourage children who might be a little bit hesitant to do something fun outdoors. You can also check out one of our Eco Explorer backpack kits at our Sarasota County libraries. These are free kits that you can check out with a library card to learn about green living, so sustainability, to learn about our insects, and to learn about nature in general. So these have really great activities to get kids engaged in exploring the natural world in different ways. And then we are really lucky here in Sarasota County. We have a huge amount of beautiful local county parks and preserves and natural areas that can be visited. Redbug Slough Preserve is one really great option that is accessible through one of our bus lines as well. The 6 bus goes right near there. And then over 50,000 acres of natural area that is managed by Sarasota County. So if you go to discover a park, you can look for your local neighborhood parks, but also some of those other natural areas that are larger preserves as well. And of course, our 2 state parks here, Myakka River State Park and Oscar Scherer State Park. And our Bay Runner, which is a trolley that can bring you around to Lido if you're interested in going to the beach. And then here we have a collection of over 70 different presentations and profiles of different native wildlife species that you can learn about. So if you're interested in getting to know some more of those plants and animals that you're going to find when you go outdoors, you can visit our wildlife webpage and our invasive species webpage to learn about some of the non-native species of wildlife that you can find here in Sarasota as well. Well, if there aren't any questions, thank you all so much for joining us today. We have a survey that we would greatly appreciate you taking just to share what you learned and how this presentation was for you so that we can learn a little bit more about how to improve these presentations and what you think about connecting with nature. Thank you very much for joining me today.